The story of King Solomon is one of both grandeur and tragedy, wisdom and folly, devotion and downfall. As a figure revered for his unmatched wisdom, unparalleled wealth, and divine favor, Solomon's life has captivated generations. But his tale is also one of solemn warning, a mirror to humanity's struggles with pride, temptation, and the seductive pull of worldly desires. Born to King David and Bathsheba, Solomon ascended to the throne under circumstances that were anything but simple. The royal family of Israel was rife with conflict and ambition, with several of David's sons vying for power and favor. Yet amid the political tension, Solomon was chosen by God himself to carry on his father's legacy. When Solomon assumed the throne, Israel was on the brink of a golden age. King David had secured the borders, established a strong military presence, and laid the groundwork for a prosperous kingdom. But the nation needed more than a warrior. It needed a leader with vision, wisdom, and a deep sense of justice to build upon the foundation his father had set. Solomon, known for his intelligence and insight, appeared to be the perfect choice for the role. Early in his reign, Solomon demonstrated a profound dedication to his people and, more importantly, to God. At a young age, he encountered a moment that would define his legacy. One night, while sleeping at Gibeon, God appeared to him in a dream and asked, "What do you desire most?" This was an unprecedented opportunity for any king, a divine offer that could have included wealth, power, or the defeat of his enemies. Yet Solomon, in an act of humility and foresight, asked not for riches or victory, but for wisdom. He sought the understanding to distinguish between right and wrong, so he could lead his people with justice. God was pleased with Solomon's request, for it showed a selfless heart devoted to the well-being of his nation. In response, God not only granted him wisdom, but also bestowed upon him wealth, honor, and a long life, so long as Solomon remained faithful. Thus, Solomon began his rule with a powerful advantage, using his newfound wisdom to administer justice and guide Israel into prosperity. In these early years, he became a beacon of righteous leadership, setting the stage for what would become one of the most prosperous periods in Israel's history. One of the most famous examples of Solomon's wisdom is recounted in a case brought before him by two women, each claiming to be the mother of the same child. The situation seemed impossible to resolve, as neither woman would relent. In a moment of brilliance, Solomon ordered that the child be cut in two, with half given to each woman. Horrified, the true mother immediately pleaded to give the child to the other woman rather than see it harmed, while the other woman agreed to the division. Through this act, Solomon discerned the identity of the true mother, for only she had shown a selfless love. This judgment left the people of Israel in awe and cemented his reputation as a wise and discerning king. Solomon's wisdom extended beyond legal matters. It encompassed a vast understanding of nature, philosophy, and governance. Under his leadership, Israel flourished economically, becoming a major center of trade and culture. By establishing strategic trade routes and alliances with neighboring nations, Solomon ushered Israel into unprecedented prosperity. Ships laden with gold, silver, ivory, and exotic animals brought treasures to his court, and Israel's coffers swelled. This wealth was not merely the result of astute trade, it was also a sign of God's favor and a reflection of the people's respect for a king who ruled with wisdom and justice. Yet of all his accomplishments, perhaps the most significant was the construction of the temple in Jerusalem. This grand structure was not just a symbol of architectural prowess, but a sacred place, a physical representation of God's presence on earth. Solomon inherited the dream of building the temple from his father, King David, who longed to construct a house for God, but was forbidden to complete it. Solomon took up this mission with zeal, and for 7 years workers labored with the finest materials, cedar from Lebanon, gold, silver, and bronze, to create a structure that would become the heart of Israel's spiritual life. When the temple was finally completed, Solomon held a dedication ceremony of great reverence and solemnity. He led the people in prayer, acknowledging God's greatness and asking for divine protection over Israel. "Lord," he prayed, "there is no one like you in heaven or on earth, you who keep your covenant of love with your servants, who continue wholeheartedly in your way." In this moment, Solomon stood at the pinnacle of his devotion, reflecting his early reverence for God and his commitment to creating a kingdom centered around faith and justice. However, as Solomon's power and wealth increased, so did his vulnerability to temptation. Over time, the king who once sought wisdom and humility found himself seduced by the trappings of power. One of the key contributors to Solomon's downfall was his marriages to foreign women, an extensive collection that included 700 wives and 300 concubines. These unions were often politically motivated, intended to secure alliances and maintain peace with neighboring nations. But they came at a great spiritual cost, for Solomon's wives brought with them the religious practices of their homelands, introducing the worship of foreign gods into Israel. Despite God's repeated warnings, Solomon allowed himself to be drawn into idol idol worship. He constructed altars for gods such as Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, a god associated with abominable practices, including child sacrifice. This was a clear violation of God's commandments, and it signaled a deep spiritual decline in Solomon's life. The king, who had once been devoted to God and his laws, now found himself entangled in practices that went against the very foundation of his faith. As a result, God appeared to Solomon a second time to issue a solemn warning. If Solomon and his descendants did not keep God's commandments and decrees, Israel would face severe consequences. God declared, "I will cut off Israel from the land I have given them and will reject this temple I have consecrated for my name." Despite this warning, Solomon's heart remained hardened, and he continued in his disobedience, allowing his devotion to God to wither. The consequences of Solomon's actions were not limited to his personal life. They reverberated throughout the entire kingdom. God decreed that the kingdom would be torn from Solomon's hands, though, out of love for David, this judgment would not take effect until after Solomon's death. This meant that after Solomon passed, Israel would be divided into two kingdoms, Israel in the north and Judah in the south. This division marked the end of Israel's golden age and the beginning of a period marked by conflict, political instability, and eventual conquest by foreign powers. Solomon's final years were marked not by triumph but by a profound sense of regret and despair. Despite having attained everything a person could desire, power, wealth, and fame, he found himself spiritually destitute. In his reflections documented in the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon expresses a deep existential sorrow. He writes, "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity," a haunting declaration from a man who had everything yet felt empty. He recounts how he pursued wealth, pleasure, wisdom, and material satisfaction, only to find that none of it brought lasting fulfillment. "I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun." These reflections are the words of a man who once stood at the pinnacle of power and glory, but ultimately realized that true contentment cannot be found in worldly achievements. Solomon's regret serves as a warning to all who seek happiness in material success or earthly power. His life, which began with divine favor and unparalleled wisdom, ended in despair because he allowed himself to drift from his relationship with God. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon implores his readers to remember that true wisdom lies not in accumulating wealth or attaining power, but in maintaining a faithful relationship with God. The story of Solomon is not merely an ancient tale, but a timeless lesson. In a world filled with temptations for fame, wealth, and success, it is easy to become consumed with the pursuit of things we believe will bring happiness. Yet Solomon's life reminds us that all of these pursuits are ultimately vain without a foundation rooted in faith and loyalty to God. His experiences invite each of us to reflect on our own lives and ask, are we chasing after things that cannot bring lasting peace? Are we letting the world lead us away from our relationship with God? In his final words, Solomon offers a sobering conclusion. "Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind." His life, marked by both greatness and regret, stands as a testament to the truth that material success cannot replace a pure heart and a soul devoted to God. Solomon had it all, yet in the end, he found it all to be meaningless. His journey serves as a powerful reminder that true fulfillment comes not from what we accumulate, but from whom we serve. Solomon's final years were clouded by the consequences of his own choices. Despite his unparalleled wisdom and early faithfulness, he found himself isolated, distant from the divine favor that once guided his life. The once glorious kingdom that he had built was starting to show signs of fracture. His indulgences in idol worship and his disobedience to God's commands had not only led to his personal downfall, but also sowed the seeds of division within the kingdom. As Solomon aged, the once unified Israel began to experience internal unrest. The burden of Solomon's excessive spending, his extravagant building projects, and his heavy taxation weighed heavily on the people. His unrelenting pursuit of alliances through marriage and treaties had entangled the kingdom in foreign influences, and many began to question the wisdom of a leader who had so thoroughly turned away from God. Solomon's rule, once marked by peace and prosperity, became a time of political tension and uncertainty. It was during this period that God, true to his word, raised up adversaries against Solomon. These adversaries were not merely external threats, but internal challenges that served as a reflection of Solomon's disobedience. One of the most notable was Jeroboam, a talented and ambitious leader from the tribe of Ephraim. Jeroboam, who had served in Solomon's administration, was chosen by God to be the instrument of judgment upon the kingdom. God sent a prophet to Jeroboam telling him that he would become king over 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel. This prophecy marked the beginning of the division that would eventually fracture Solomon's kingdom. The division of the kingdom became inevitable. Upon Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam took the throne, but his harsh policies, which mirrored the burdens of Solomon's reign, only fueled the discontent that had already been simmering. The northern tribes, led by Jeroboam, revolted against Rehoboam's leadership, splitting the kingdom into two, Israel in the north and Judah in the south. The northern tribes, led by Jeroboam, established their own kingdom, and from that moment on, Israel was never again a unified nation. Solomon's story serves as a stark reminder that wisdom, if not guarded by humility and a steadfast commitment to God, can be corrupted. His downfall did not come in a single moment, but through a series of small compromises that, over time, eroded his spiritual foundation. As a young king, Solomon had been humble, seeking wisdom to serve his people, but as his power grew, so did his pride, and his heart began to turn away from the God who had made him great. In the end, Solomon's kingdom, though once mighty, was divided, and his personal legacy was marred by the very things he had once sought to avoid. The splendor of the temple he had built would not save Israel from the consequences of his disobedience. The wealth he had accumulated would not protect the people from the coming judgment. Solomon's life was a tale of both extraordinary achievement and profound failure, and his reign serves as a cautionary tale for all those who seek success without wisdom, power without righteousness, and riches without faith.